Coming to you live from the Business Radio X studio, it's Franchise Marketing Radio, brought to you by IDS, an award-winning digital marketing agency that delivers integrated marketing solutions for franchisors, franchisees, and franchise development teams. Learn why over 75 brands depend on IDS's team of dedicated marketers and client service professionals to deliver a strong ROI on their marketing investment. Go to idsfranchisemarketing.com for a complimentary digital audit and consultation.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Franchise Marketing Radio. I'm your host, Rob Ganley. And as always, we have a very interesting guest with us and an awesome brand to talk about and take a look at their marketing approach. I've got Scott Oakes. He is the Vice President of Franchise Development at Scoop Soldiers. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. Tell us a little bit about, how you landed with this brand. I know you've got quite a background in franchising, and tell us a little bit about yourself and the brand.
Yeah, so I'm actually coming up on my 20th year in franchise development. So I have been doing this for longer than I'd probably like to admit. When I first came in, something that you use like FranConnect was barely a thing, right? So it was a lot of like, hey, print this lead out and keep track of everything manually, where obviously it's a completely digital world today in terms of follow-ups, in terms of, text messaging, all of that stuff. So I've seen quite the evolution in the franchise development process during my time. I got started with a service brand called Handyman Connection. So I've done service brands, I've done retail brands. I spent about 8 years in the home care industry doing franchise development for both non-medical and medical home care services. And in March, I guess it was March of 2021, was when I joined Scoop Soldiers. And, I had always been interested in working for an emerging brand, because most of the places I had come in and did franchise development for were brands that had been around anywhere from 7 to 12 years. They had 150 plus franchises, and they were ready to change their development strategy from what got them there to kind of the next evolution. And so a lot of them had, made some mistakes in terms of franchisees they were recruiting early on that, caused either validation problems or, you had some poor performers, folks who, after you've been running it for 7+ years, you go, okay, maybe that wasn't, the best choice for them or us. Right. And so, I said, man, I'd love to work with a brand where we could kind of build it out right from the start. And so that in 5 or 6 years, we're not going, okay, yeah, we should have done this differently. So, Josh and EJ, our co-founders, I just really clicked with them. I tend to look at brands the way a candidate does before I go work for them, because at the end of the day, I've got to be able to answer all the questions in my head that a candidate would, right? What are the unit economics like? Right? What are the tools in place? What's the franchisor doing from a support standpoint? Because if I'm gonna be touting this to candidates, I really have to believe in it, and the answers have to be solid. And right. They just checked all the boxes. Now, the weird thing was, hey, it's not rocket science what we do. We we take care of the worst part of pet ownership, which is cleaning up the yard after your pets. So even my wife was like, are you gonna be okay? Saying that the business you're repping is, a pooper scooper business. And I go, you know what? At the end of the day, if the unit economics are right, franchisees are and can be successful. It's really, one of those dirty jobs where people are happy to outsource something that they don't like to do.
Yeah.
Well, all those things clicked. So it was exciting,
right,
to be able to come in kind of at an earlier stage in the franchise cycle.
Exactly. No, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, when you're talking about an emerging brand, that is a time where you can lay the right foundation, right? It should be the same foundation then as it would be later. Trying to change things later is always harder, right? And guys like you and I have been around long enough to see that and learn that. And so being, and I do work with a lot of emerging brands too, and that's part of why I think it's gratifying to do that. And I think, tell me more, because I know what you're saying, right? You know, about what you're doing, the service that's being provided, right? But in there lies the beauty of the business model too. And there's some really unique things that you guys are doing that really are near and dear to my heart, right? Which is the military and pets, right? I love dogs. And, but tell me more about, I know you guys are emerging. I think you're at about 20 units, give or take, in that range. I know that you're growing, right, significantly, but you have a very unique approach to growth. And I would love to talk about that. I think you call it an enhanced territory, but it's your plan for rolling things out. Tell us more about that. I think that's a really important marketing idea, the way you guys approach it.
Yeah. So one of the things that really appealed to me was that we were operating both corporately owned operations as well as franchisee owned operations. And what we were really doing was we were expanding corporately, before we got into franchising. We've only been franchising for 3 years, but we've been in business for 12. So we expanded from Dallas, Fort Worth to Austin to Houston to Oklahoma to Arizona to Colorado. So and each time you expand, you have to develop the tools, right? So you're developing systems, you're developing training tools, you're learning marketing every time you go into a new market. All right. So, you're making mistakes, but you're also learning what works. And so then we started going from different geographies. It just wasn't Texas. Now we're in Arizona, where the yards are very different. Now we're in Colorado, where you have the snow component and things like that. So it really gave us a lot of experience and development on the support side for our franchisees. And what that turned into was really us using those corporate operations to seed markets for our franchisees, where we would go in and we would hire technicians. We purchase the trucks, we would start marketing it and really start building out the customer base in the market, which then it would turn into what we would call an enhanced territory, where a franchisee could come into a market. Like today, we've got a corporate operation in San Antonio. Well, a franchisee can come into San Antonio, acquire one or multiple territories. All right. And for an additional cost, acquire the clients that are in that area. So they're coming in to a franchise model, getting the training, the support, but what they're also getting is a current clients and revenue stream, which allows them to obviously ramp up faster, be able to see a return much quicker on that. We allow them to have access to our employees there to interview. So there's a likelihood they're going to get an experienced employee that's got some track record. And, as well as, in many cases, even access to vehicles, which doesn't sound like a big perk, but in the last 3 years, getting access to vehicle inventory has been a challenge for a lot of businesses, including ours. So if we've already got them, we're eliminating a potential problem for the franchisee. So, wow. And at the same time, we still have your traditional new opportunities as well too. So, we had a franchisee open up in Northwest Arkansas, which is obviously the home of Walmart. So, they open it up and are building it up from scratch. And so, and for that, it's just setting the right expectations.
Yeah, right. So tell me a little bit. So enhanced territory, and when we talk about turnkey and we talk about franchising, that really is. I mean, you're almost handing a running business. It's almost like an existing business, really. You're buying, which is great, because that would be one of the most challenging times. And most franchisors really focus on onboarding and that initial first year, and that's an important time. And to be able to do that also tells our
franchisees and our candidates. Sorry, I cut you off. You're gonna have the same problem with me. My wife does.
No worries. We're talking. Yeah.
Yep. So what it does is the corporate operations allows us to keep one foot in the day-to-day operations and experience the same things our franchisees are doing. And so if we have ideas on different services we want to launch, different ways to manage employees, different trainings, different marketing approaches, it allows us to test bed those in these markets before rolling them out to our franchisees. So it's a little bit more of a fully baked idea when it rolls out, as opposed to just saying, hey, we think this will work. We had one franchisee try it, and now, everybody should go try it, right? So
that's right. Well, so tell me a little bit about that. I mean, so you have an enhanced territory. Obviously, one of the unique things about what we're talking about is that you're in the location or geography from a marketing standpoint is a factor, right? So like the fact that you're physically there versus maybe you're testing something marketing wise in Phoenix may not work exactly the same way in Colorado. But question, what are some of the things that you have found work for this kind of business from a digital marketing point of view? What kind of things you feel have to be there that help with that?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, we've got certain demographics that we're looking for when we're constructing territories, when we're going into a marketplace. So when you take a look at our service at its core, it's a little less than $20 a week for us to come out and do pretty much a standard size yard for up to 4 dogs. All right. And that's actually a decent amount of dogs when you think about it. So, for a little less than $20 a week, for a lot of folks, it's a no-brainer. Please come take care of it. I don't want to do it. My kids don't want to do it. What have you. Okay. And so, but at the end of the day, I would never call it a needs business, right? Because, you're one, you're one person and a shovel away from going out and doing it yourself. Right. So in terms of, household incomes, there are certain demographics that we look for, but that all feeds into our digital marketing because the bulk of our new clients are coming from either our Google pay-per-click campaigns. All right. Each of our franchisees will already have a localized website, which is another benefit of the enhanced territory. There's already traffic starting to build on that localized website. So as opposed to a brand new territory where that's going to take a little more time to build. So you've got to have some more marketing dollars in place to allow for that ramp up. Okay. We also do a lot of Facebook advertising, which on a consumer side, we found very effective. On franchise development, Facebook's kind of been up and down for not only us, but I know a lot of brands in terms of the effectiveness of it. So, but on the consumer side, it's really effective for us. And then also word of mouth. The benefit is that with the enhanced territory, again, you can tap into client referrals, referring friends and family and neighbors and things like that almost immediately.
Right.
Right.
I find a lot of the home services models, that is one of the biggest advantages, really. I mean, if you're doing good work for one neighbor, chances of you not getting several in that neighborhood are slim if you're marketing. And at the end of the day, that's a great way to pick up additional business as you go you have your Google and your Facebook, anything else that's feeding the initial relationship. And then hopefully you get more from that through that referral process. And that makes the marketing a little more affordable too, if you can get a lot more impact out of one transaction. So that's really cool. But tell me a little bit about the community involvement. Like I know there's a connection also with the military, the way you guys view the brand obviously has some branding elements around it. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously military themed. Just, from obviously the name of the company to the imagery, trying to combine those things. But on top of that, and to really support that, there's a couple of things that we're doing to really kind of connect with that cause and that service. And a big one that we do is we work with a company called Valor Service Dogs out of the Tampa, Florida area. And so what they do is they train new service dogs from basically a puppy. It's about a 2-year program that they take the dogs through to basically train them and then donate them to veterans and anybody that may have been wounded, whoever would need a service dog that's a veteran, it goes out to them. So what we do is we're sponsoring pets and then donating money to that. So we sponsor the full training of the pet for that 2 years, and we get updates on them as well, where they're typically when they graduate and they're assigned to their new owner as well. So we cover that. And then we just also working on building donations so that they've got a breeding area now where they're going to have what they call a whelping room, a Scoop Soldiers whelping room for the puppies that they're going to be breeding on top of that. And so there's no cost to the veterans at all. And pets is a huge part, of obviously our business. Everybody on the team, other than me, has a dog. So, and I love dogs. Anyway, it's a whole other story, but my kids are mad.
I've had dogs throughout my life and not had dogs. Yeah. So I know what you mean.
Yeah. So they're great. And the service dogs are obviously a very important part of the mental well-being, the ongoing support services that veterans need. On top of that, our franchisees in the local community are going out and building relationships, with the local VA, giving discounted services to veterans. Well, and on top of that, the veterans that get the service dogs, we provide them free Scoop services for life.
Wow,
so they don't have to worry.
Let me ask you this, Scott. I mean, that makes me think, and we're in a changing world, right? I don't think I have to say that. Yeah. But one of the things I noticed that's changing about marketing is this idea that brands, companies, whether you're big or small, have sort of an obligation, or people are starting to expect it, where you're giving back. Something is being given back. Something is being thought through to give back. Could be a small thing, could be a big thing. And of course, in doing that, you're marketing your brand, you're marketing who you are as a company, what you believe in. And so it is a part of marketing, but at the same time, it's also something good. I think they call it social marketing. I've heard people use that phrase, not social media marketing, but social marketing.
Yeah. I've also heard called like cause marketing too.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell me, I mean, so is that part of the thought process there? I mean, what went behind? I think that's amazing what you do for the veterans. And then, of course, it's a great way to kind of represent your business and interact in the community. But tell me, how did that come about? Was it sort of intentful? Was it just?
It wasn't intentful to do it so we could get recognized for it and use that to boost the brand. Okay. So it really came from the fact that, in the other businesses that our owners operate, there is a charitable component, that they've incorporated to the business because they want to be able to give back, and so when we were looking at what we could do with Scoop Soldiers, obviously, the easy thing would have been, pet rescues and things like that. But when we found the connection to the veterans, that just made 100% sense to us in terms of doing that. And so it's like something you start in the background and then someone goes, hey, you should tell people you're doing that. So, okay, we'll tell people we're doing it, but we're not doing it so we can tell people. The only thing we're doing is really actually use it to promote Valor service dogs so that they get the publicity from it. So more people are aware that they're doing this kind of work for the veterans. So, it allows us to help them continue to do their work. So, and then the other thing that we do on top of it with the military thing is that, we are part of VetFran. And so we do offer a $10,000 discount off of our initial franchise fee for veterans to try to, help give them a little bit of a help, for those that are interested in starting a franchise. And we've got a couple of veterans now. We've had, and we've been adding some veterans to our franchise brands, and they do great.
That's great. Yeah, no, the more the merrier when it comes to doing that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so, as I'm listening to you and sharing your background with me, you've been with several brands and have a lot of experience in this business and in marketing. in franchising. Is there one thing that you'd want to leave with the audience, but just as kind of of all this experience that you kind of embraced as sort of that drive, that one driver for you as a professional? Is there one thing you want to leave with the audience that, or someone seeking a franchise, the one thing they should be looking at, or good piece of advice you want to leave with them?
Yeah, and there's some different aspects to this, but I would say the one thing is, if you are focused on your franchisees' unit economics and your franchisees' profitability, all good things will come from that. All right. If you've got a solid business model where, it can ramp up, in a reasonable amount of time, the investment is proportional to the return, you're focused on franchisee profitability. Thus, that's going to make franchisees happy. It's going to make development real easy. All right. You're not going to have to convince people to get into the business. If you've got good unit economics, then they show up in your item 19. And if they've got good economics, your franchisees are going to be happy. So that's going to show up in your validation, and everything will snowball out of that.
Yeah.
And so if that's where you focus, and that's where, you've got that cake recipe to, that ends up with the result being, hey, this is a good, profitable business that's not a comet, that it's going to, it's a longer lasting business. Everything else good from a franchise or perspective and from a franchisee perspective will roll out of that.
You know what? You're right. I mean, it's like a guy I'm listening, like, yeah, that's so true for so many reasons. Like it's such, when you're a franchisee getting started, having those successes as you go is so important, right? Obviously, we're all in business to do well at it. And part of that is the money side, but the money side is what fuels your ability to do your passion, if that's why you're in it. If you're in it for other reasons, but you need the money. Like if you're not running a healthy business, you can't really serve your clients as well. And so that's
I'm not a
important.
Franchise candidate yet that's looking to run a nonprofit. So
that's right.
Unless that's your franchise model. Hey,
Rob,
right. One quick thing about the connection to having a cause or a service. I think you see that a lot more with the upcoming generations, with the millennials, the Gen Zs. They all want what they're associated with to be connected to something that's also helping.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
and I think if you're a brand that doesn't have that, you definitely want to be thinking about doing that, because your younger franchise candidates, as they become more of your main franchise candidates, that's going to be part of their decision-making process, a lot like how it's a part of their decision-making process on employment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I think that's why I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about that. I think that is a very important focus and trend for marketing and for brands in the future, especially because of what you said, right? And because of the changing world we're in. We all have to work together. And I think there's a lot of good that can be done through the private sector, through business, right?
Yep.
So that's great. Listen, it was a pleasure having you on today. And before I let you go, is there a website or a way that folks can learn more about your brand that you'd like to share?
Yeah. So on the franchise side, it's scoopsoldiersfranchising.com. You can click on all our different social media stuff. And then on the consumer side, it's just scoopsoldiers.com.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate your time today, Scott. I want to thank the audience for tuning in once again to another episode of Franchise Marketing Radio, and bye for now.